Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's RC Maxfield here for the Back to 12 podcast. And in today's video, we will name the 5 must-watch players for the Red Raiders in 2023 as we are just under 55 days away from kickoff. Big 12 media days are set for this week here in DFW. And well, I want to talk about the 5 guys that I will be watching most this year, and maybe you should be too for the Red Raiders if they want to live up to some of those expectations that they set for themselves. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button to stay in the know on Texas Tech football all year long on the fastest growing and most interactive Texas Tech YouTube channel right here on the Back to 12 podcast channel. All right, let's jump into this in terms of, 5 players, and I'm not going to lie to you guys. I said 5, but there's technically going to be 7 because I grouped some guys together. Don't shoot the messenger. Hey, it's my video. I can make it how I want to, right? But let's go ahead and do this. Let's start out with number 5, and that is Jesiah Pierre. Josiah Pierre is truly a difference maker on the defense this year for a multitude of reasons. First and foremost, we know who Josiah Pierre is, right? He's a guy that was opposite of Tyree Wilson for a couple of seasons, was really good at getting to the passer when he was healthy, and also could drop back into coverage a little bit. Well, now he's having a position change. He's going from outside linebacker to inside linebacker, and he's going to be on the mic for Texas Tech. And I think that's a huge deal just from an experience standpoint. He knows the verbiage and everything, right? It's huge for this fact. For guys like Jacob Rodriguez and Isaac Smith, who are going to have bigger roles for Texas Tech this season in the linebacker unit for the Red Raiders. And now you have a guy there at the Mike linebacker spot in Josiah Pierre, and it really helps alleviate some of that pressure in terms of the communication that those younger guys are going to have to really tell other guys on the defense, whether that's in the secondary, defensive line, whatever it may be. So I really like Jesiah Pierre moving inside. He can go sideline to sideline. He's an athletic freak when it comes back to the linebacker spot, right? And I expect him to have a good season at the linebacker position for the Red Raiders. All right, let's shift over to the offense now. And a guy that I think a lot of people are excited about. It's Dre McCray, the Austin Peay transfer, a 2-time all-conference player now, albeit one time in the Atlantic Sun, the other time in the Ohio Valley. But when he committed to Texas Tech, he brought a factor to this offense for Zach Kittley that really the Red Raiders just didn't have in year number 1 with him as the offensive coordinator. And that is a true guy that can take the top off of the defense at any time. He's got legit 4.3 speed, and there's nothing like that in the current room for Texas Tech in terms of an experience factor, right? You think about some of the guys that Texas Tech has. They've got the Jerron Bradleys of the world, Loic Fungis, Miles Price. The list goes on and on. There's good wide receivers in that room. There's no question about it. But there's not a guy that could legitimately at any time take the ball 60 yards on a simple slant route due to his speed and speed alone, right? You've got those physical guys on the outside in Bradley and Loic. And I think that these guys are really going to benefit from a guy like Dre McCray because he can do that. Defenses are going to have to really be aware of where he is at all time. And if they put too much on Bradley or Loic on the outside, Dre's going to beat you right down the middle of the field with that 4.43 or that 4.443 speed, right? He is one of those guys. And you look at what he's done against high-level competition, and there may not be any higher level of competition than the Alabamas and the Georgias of the world. Well, last year at Austin Peay, he had 12 receptions for 92 yards against the Alabama Crimson Tide in Tuscaloosa. Okay, so he's got experience in big games, albeit, 1 or 2, but he knows how to play against Power 5 schools. And I think he's going to be a fundamental part of the Texas Tech Red Raider offense this upcoming season. Now, before we get into number 3, I want to ask you a little bit more about the wide receivers down below. Answer this question for me. Which wide receiver are you most excited to see in 2023 for the Red Raiders? Now, I think it's Dre McCray for a lot of guys, even Jerron Bradley, but I think we'd be remiss not to mention guys like Loic and Miles Price, guys like that. There's a lot of really talented wide receivers, and I think the room is going to be a little bit better this year because last year they really couldn't separate a whole lot. Now you get a guy like Dre McCray to open things up. That should open things up in the middle of the field specifically for guys like Loic, Bradley, and even Miles Price below. But let me know which wide receiver are you most excited to watch this season for the Red Raiders. All right. the duo start here. Again, I told you it was 5 must-watch players, right? But there's technically 7. And this is where we move on to the defense. And it's got to be Steve Linton and Miles Cole. And the reason being is this. They're trying to replace the production of one of the best defensive players in Texas Tech football history in Tyree Wilson, right? No one person is going to be able to do that. But you go out and you get a guy like Steve Linton in the portal, who I think was vastly underutilized and used not correctly, I guess would probably be the best way to say it, up at Syracuse. And you bring him into a defensive scheme that Tim DeRuyter has proven time and time again with different variables of players, right? Like Von Miller, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Tyree Wilson are vastly different from each other, but they all succeeded in a Tim DeRuyter defense, right? You go out and get a guy like Steve Linton who has serious speed and bend off the outside. You keep a guy like Miles Cole who had a really good bowl game last year against Ole Miss, and you're trying to really put 2 productive players to reproduce what Tyree had, and I think they can do more than what Tyree did as an individual, right? You look at what they bring. Again, serious speed on one side with Linton, power with Cole. When you look at a guy that I think could have double-digit sacks for the Red Raiders this year, Steve Linton's the guy that comes to mind right away. And that's not a knock on Miles Cole. I think Miles Cole is going to have 6 to 8 sacks this year. But I'd be remiss to say this as well. These guys are going to be productive for the Red Raiders, and a large part to do with that is the guys in the middle that defenses are going to have to account for night in and night out for the Red Raiders, and that's Jalen Hutchins and Tony Bradford. Both of them coming back is vital to the success of the Texas Tech defensive line, and it's going to make life easier for guys like Steve Linton and Miles Cole on the outside, where their sole objective is going to be getting to the passer and wreaking havoc on Big 12 quarterbacks for the Red Raiders. And that secondary that Texas Tech has could potentially allow them a couple extra seconds on some plays to get to the quarterback. So I really like these 2 guys. Again, I think Steve Linton could have double-digit sacks. And if you listen to my bold predictions video back here on the channels, I'll link that down in the comments in the description below. I said that Steve Linton would have double-digit sacks this year for the Red Raiders. I think Miles Cole could have 6 or 8, and they are going to be vital to the success of the Red Raiders when it comes to that defense that Tim DeRuyter's putting out there. All right, before we get to the final 2, got to ask you this. One word to describe the Texas Tech defense in 2023. Let me know, because the one word that comes to mind for me is experience. I mean, there is so much experience on this Texas Tech defense. Now, granted, you get a guy like C.J. Baskerville who's coming in, but he's played at the college level, right? But you look at the guys you have in your secondary just specifically, right? And I'm not even going to name everybody, but you've got Rabbit. You've also got Malik Dunlap, Rashad Williams. I mean, there's so many experienced guys in that secondary, not to mention your defensive line, and then obviously Josiah Pierre at the linebacker spot. So experience is the word for me, but let me know your one word to describe the Texas Tech defense down in the comments below. All right, if the Texas Tech offense is going to take that next step, right, that we thought maybe was possible with Zach Kittley and your number 1 that maybe didn't live up to some people's expectations, it's going to start with the offensive line and these 2 guys right here, Cole Spencer and Rusty Stats. This was the position that everybody wanted to upgrade in the offseason, and I think Texas Tech did that. You got to remember, they had Cole Spencer last year. He got a medical red shirt due to an injury. He will now be the starting left guard for the Red Raiders. Well, they went to go get his counterpart and compadre over for the Hilltoppers at Western Kentucky, and Rusty Stats, who he played with alongside at Western Kentucky, in Zach Kittley's offense, right? So this is going to be a nice, easy plug-and-play type situation for the Red Raiders when it comes to the left guard and center positions. But I think an underrated aspect of this, in my opinion, is that they really allow Texas Tech to put the other 3 guys on the offensive line in more natural spots. I think Monroe Mills is going to flourish as a left tackle alongside Cole Spencer. I think Dennis Wilburn moving from center to right guard is a better fit for Dennis Wilburn, and that's not a knock on Dennis Wilburn. He was electric last year at the center position and arguably the Red Raiders' best offensive lineman. And then you flip Caleb Rogers from the left side to the right side where I think he's better. And now you have an experienced offensive line for the Red Raiders where everyone on the offensive line has at least started 1 year in college football, right? most of these guys multiple 2-3 years, right? Now you have a veteran-laden offensive line to protect a quarterback in Tyler Shuck or Baron Morton, right? In terms of, hey, this is what's going to happen. This is going to be a better offensive line. They know how to communicate. And the best part about it, in my opinion, is Rusty Stats knows the verbiage of a Zach Kittley offense, so he can be used as that other guy. Because when you look at an offense historically, right? Like when you look at great offenses, the quarterback obviously knows the offense the best, but the second guy is the center, right? And Rusty Stats definitely knows this Zach Kittley offense. So I'm really excited about these two guys in terms of what they could do for Texas Tech, not only as starters, but also how they impact the depth of the offensive line as well. Texas Tech has a lot more of that with these guys starting now. All right, we know who number one is. It's got to be Tyler Shuck, right? This is an obvious number one. He's 8-1 as a starter for Texas Tech. His career stats are 3,879 passing yards, 29 TDs. I think he can do that in a season, if not more TDs, right? Like, I think he can become the next guy to pass for 4,000 yards for Texas Tech. The last guy to do that was Nick Shimonek the year after Patrick Mahomes left. I truly think you can do that. We all know there's only one factor that comes into play in terms of Tyler Shuck and him producing, and it's health. And again, I'm not the guy that likes to, portray injuries onto anybody or anything like that. But I'll say this, if Tyler Shuck stays healthy, the sky's the absolute limit for the Red Raiders. I truly believe that. Again, we've already gone over some of the improvements on the offensive side for Texas Tech. The O-line, better. Wide receivers, more experienced, and they add Dre McCray. The running back room, sure, you lose to Roderick Thompson, but Cameron Valdez is a home run hitter, and you bring back Taj Brooks, not to mention you got Bryson Donnell, right? This is a 100% prove-it year for Tyler Shuck, and I think he's going to absolutely do it. You'll have to remember this. Tyler Shuck was getting buzz as a first-round NFL draft pick when he was at Oregon and he transferred into Texas Tech. Obviously, that has been negated with his 2 years that were injury-riddled at Texas Tech. But I truly believe if he is healthy and he plays 12 games for the Red Raiders, he will be viewed as a top 2 quarterback in the Big 12. And Texas Tech can meet those sky is the limit expectations out in the 806. All right, I've got to ask you one more time. Which Texas Tech player are you most excited to watch in 2023? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you haven't already, be sure to like the video for more Texas Tech football videos daily as we lead up to kickoff. Again, just 55 days away from the start of year 2 of Joey McGuire. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button to stay in the know on Texas Tech football all year long right here on your one-stop shop for everything Texas Tech. Breaking news, we've got rumors, we've got recruiting, everything right here on the Back to 12 podcast channel.